continuing today with our series that we've been calling The Essence of Unity, because August is the month of our Unity co-founders' birthdays. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were both born in the month of August, so we take this time to focus on some of our core teachings and to look at our Unity history, and sometimes we call August, we call it Unity Basics Month. That's another way of looking at it. Now last week we did a review of the 12 Powers, which is one of the core ideas that Charles Fillmore offered to the Unity movement. And we might think of the 12 Powers as our 12 core human virtues. Think of them as those aspects of humankind that make it possible for us to discern and create and appreciate all that is true, good, and beautiful. When you put all the 12 Powers together, they represent Charles Fillmore's idea of what it takes for humankind to flourish or thrive in face of the impermanence and change that we're constantly looking at in life. No matter what the obstacle might be, whether we're facing a financial challenge or a health issue, relationships, or some kind of a loss, any kind of a traumatic event, the 12 Powers serve for us as a reminder of the resources that are at our disposal 24/7. They're a part of us and they can't be taken away. They're ours by right of consciousness, and they can't be touched by anything outside. Now think about that. No one or no thing can diminish them or take them away. Just this last Thursday, August 23rd, was the birthday of William Ernest Henley. He was the author of a well-known poem called Invictus, which I'm sure you've probably heard. It's the one that ends with the verse that says, "It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul," that one. And the interesting thing about this poem is that he wrote it after he had a leg amputated due to complications from tuberculosis. And he was facing the amputation of his other leg. They did manage to save it with a lot of medical treatment, but he wrote this poem as a response to that situation that he was facing. And it was kind of like it was his way of sending a message to the universe, which basically said, give it your best shot, I'm up to the challenge. So I thought maybe, as I was preparing for this and I was looking at this poem, I heard in the back of my mind, I heard the voice of Dennis Kane reading this poem, and I thought, well, Dennis is going to be with us this Sunday, so I'd like to ask Dennis to come up, and he's going to share this wonderful brief poem with us in its entirety.
Invictus. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud under the bludgeonings of chance. My head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Great job, Dennis. Thank you. So think of that when you hear the 12 Powers, because I think they're closely linked. That's the kind of thing that it takes to give us that resolve, to know that it's there and that we too could speak those words as if they were our own. In fact, yesterday as I heard the news about John McCain passing, I remembered an interview that he did back in 2008 when he was running for president. This was during the primary season. He had an interview with Bill Kristol. And they got to talking about different things, but one of the things that he mentioned was that, like most of us here, I think we all had to memorize poems when we were in school. Well, Invictus was a poem that John McCain memorized when he was in school, and of course, obviously, he took that with him and it would come up from time to time while he was staying at the Hanoi Hilton, so to speak, during his years as a POW. So this poem has done a lot of good things in the world for people who need to remember their own power, whether it's the 12 powers or some other idea of our own power. That poem captures the kind of resolve and the conviction that anyone can cultivate, okay? You don't have to be a war hero. You don't have to be facing the kind of challenges that William Henley was facing. Anyone can cultivate this kind of resolve if they focus on what Eric Butterworth, Unity author Eric Butterworth, called the power within us. And again, I'll say it again, that power within us can be summed up by this Unity concept of the 12 powers. I'm going to put them up here on the screen. I think I had a slide for that. If not, it's in your bulletin. I'm just going to read them again briefly. We're not going to go through all of them today. We summarized them last week. But the powers are faith, love, strength, power, wisdom, understanding, imagination, will, order, zeal, release, and life. Now, I said last week that there really is no official order for these to go in. But having said that, I think that faith really does belong in the number one spot. Our ability to recognize and completely access these 12 powers is based on a foundation of faith. Being able to use these powers in support of a long, healthy, and prosperous life rests on a foundation of faith. And by that, I do not mean the Mark Twain definition of faith. Y'all remember what Mark Twain said about faith? Faith is believing in something you know ain't so. That's a popular notion of faith. It's something that we would call blind faith. Traditional religion typically wants us to believe things without proof, without evidence. That's what we call that kind of blind faith, blind obedience to authority. It's true because I say that it's true, and because of my stature and standing within this hierarchy, you're not allowed to question my authority. You're not allowed to question what I tell you is the truth. You're not allowed to question what you read in this particular book that says it's the truth. And that's a very dangerous thing. When a religion demands blind faith and obedience to authority, it will inevitably be used to control people and to cover up atrocities. As we learned a couple of weeks ago with the news, that sad, shocking news coming out of the state of Pennsylvania. There's no such thing as blind faith and unity. We want knowing faith, not blind faith, which is why I define faith as trusting what we know to be true. Knowing and knowledge is based on practical application, practical experience. We know something is true because we can demonstrate it to be true. In practice, evidence. The problem is that even when we have that knowledge, even when we know something is true, we don't always trust it, do we? This fits in, by the way, very nicely with our fifth unity principle. Our fifth unity principle says that it's not enough to know a lot of stuff. It's not enough to know a lot of truth principles. It's not enough to just gain knowledge of the principles. We have to live them. We have to walk the talk. We can call ourselves truth students, unity students, and we can say that we believe certain things to be true, but what happens when it comes time to put them into practice? It's not always easy to do. And it's quite normal and very human to have doubts sometimes that stand in the way of actually walking the talk. Doubts, fear, what will they think about me? You know, those kind of things get in the way, which is why it's necessary to have faith as a foundation and a separate practice. To learn how to trust what we know to be true so we can access the other 11 powers so we can really be masters of our fate and captains of our souls. I know there's that line in the poem that Dennis just shared, the line that says, I have not winced nor cry it aloud. Well, let me just say that it's okay to wince or cry. Feel the feelings. Cry. Complain even. Get it up, get it out, and then get on with it, right? Because the important thing is what comes after the crying and after the complaining, after the wincing. What do we do after that? We can panic, we can freeze up, we can withdraw, we can give up, or we can call forth the powers of strength, love, imagination, understanding, will, whatever it takes. We trust what we know to be true about that inherent power within. And everyone here, I am 100% plus certain that everyone in this room can think of a time when they have demonstrated each one of these powers. We know they're there. We know it's true, so now we have to trust it. We have to trust that it's equal to and greater than the challenges that we see out there. There is a story that appears in actually all four of the Gospels that I think illustrates what I'm talking about here. It's an interesting story. It's called, very simply, the feeding of the 5,000. And I sometimes wonder, was it really 5,000? I mean, I seriously doubt that anyone did a head count out there. But I think it's just the author's way of saying that it was a whole lot of people out there. It doesn't matter if it was 500 or 5,000. It was a huge crowd of people that had followed Jesus out into the middle of nowhere. Might have even called it the wilderness. Followed him out into the middle of nowhere to hear him speak. And of course, he's out there all day talking. And there's no food. And it's getting late. And no. And it's getting late, a little bit dark out, and maybe you can hear the coyotes howling off in the distance someplace. And Jesus is starting to get a little bit nervous. He notices that the people are getting nervous, his disciples are getting nervous. And so the disciples come to Jesus with a suggestion. They say to him, "Hey Jesus, you need to tell everyone to hit the road. Get out of here. Go fend for yourselves. Go find something to eat." And Jesus has a different idea. He tells his disciples, he says, no, I'm not sending these people away. You feed them. The teacher gives them a task. And what happens? They fail miserably. In one version of the story, the disciples get downright snarky. You can almost see them rolling their eyes. Jesus says, you feed them, and they basically say, with what? How can we feed all these people? We could go into town to buy bread. It'll cost at least 200 denarii, which was about 6 months' wages in those days. And of course, we know that the disciples were basically unemployed, right? They were following Jesus. They had no regular occupation. Nobody had that kind of money. So Jesus, the teacher, gives them a challenge, and they don't even make an effort. They tell him, hey, it's impossible. So Jesus, like the good teacher that he is, spelled it out for him. He said, look around. Look around and start with telling me how much food we have right here, right now. In other words, don't start with I can't. Start with what you've got. Be creative. Use that power of imagination. Be resilient. Use the power of strength to see things from another perspective. Think outside the box, as we like to put it today. How about using the power of love to bring all these hungry people into your circle of caring and compassion instead of telling them to hit the road? So they start by looking around. They find 5 loaves and 2 fish. And the story says that Jesus took what they had, blessed it, gave thanks, and then everyone was fed. Not only was everyone fed, but they had baskets of food left over, and none of the 4 Gospels tells us exactly what happened. Nothing about food raining down from the sky. It doesn't even say that the loaves and fishes were multiplied. That's what everybody assumes. That's what we add to the story, but it doesn't say that the loaves and fish were multiplied. All we know from the story, staying within the words of those stories, is that whatever they had, it was sufficient. All sufficiency. There was this collective consciousness established, which I say is the outworking of our inherent powers. And as a result, everyone had enough. And there was even something left over for next time. Nothing supernatural about it. Maybe everyone pooled their resources, or a caravan.